Battlefield just did something. Something that, if the momentum holds, rewrites the narrative of one of the biggest franchises in the gaming industry. It got people excited again, but not in a nostalgic way. Not in a, maybe this one will be good kind of way. Actually excited for this new game, for Battlefield 6. And the weird part is that they didn't reinvent the shooter. They just remembered what made Battlefield feel like Battlefield. And meanwhile, Call of Duty, which is a franchise built on predictability, scale, and following up with the same ideas year after year after year, looks more brittle than it has in years. This isn't about declaring one better than the other. It's about identity, the stillness of it, and how the balance of power in shooters might shift in the upcoming year, in this 2025 and even 2026 forwards. So, let's walk through how Battlefield 6 pulled off what Call of Duty couldn't, and what that means for the next era of first-person shooters. To understand why this moment matters, we first have to look backwards. In the faraway past, when I was still a kid, buyers didn't pick between Call of Duty or Battlefield. They chose why they wanted to shoot guns online. Call of Duty sold immediacy, tight maps, predictable flow, a clean scoreboard-driven philosophy. Battlefields, on the other hand, sold scale, vehicles, environmental destructions, long corridor of risk, emergent stories, that's really big Battlefields areas and stuff. Throughout the 2010s, Call of Duty leaned into consistency. They refined, they polished, they patched, and they iterated, with nearly annual releases that rarely failed outright. It built trust, and honestly, it kinda got a bit complacent. I was there. I played thousands of hours of Call of Duty, and I mean thousands. Since Call of Duty 2, since Call of Duty 4, and meanwhile, Battlefield tried big things, sometimes too big, at least for me. They bet on spectacle, on chaos, on emergent moments. But that also meant they were just one misstep away from collapse. I wasn't a big fan of Battlefield in the past, I admit. It simply wasn't for me. I just liked the faster pace of Call of Duty. As Call of Duty fortified itself as the default first-person shooter, Battlefield's began losing presence slowly. Not because Call of Duty was always better, but because it rarely failed in execution, as the ideas were more generally the same year after year. That can be good, but that also can be bad. Battlefield, with its ambitious scale, had a higher ceiling, and the higher you go, the deeper can the fall be. And there's an obvious turning point, Battlefield 2042. The promise was immense. Massive player counts, weather effects, full destruction, a warfare sandbox all in all. But the launch was a mess. I mean, you probably remember it. Bugs, server instability, missing features, balanced chaos, lots of stuff you expect in early access and not in the fully priced AAA. The social media reaction was savage. Many longtime fans felt betrayed. And the series was losing players and community trust at an alarming rate. It was bleeding its player base. By comparison, Call of Duty never launched as a disaster, at least not in the same way. Some campaigns were painfully bad. Some monetization decisions were horrible, some skins... let's not talk about that. But the thing is, the core engine of Call of Duty rarely felt broken. The comparison wasn't fair, but it's why Call of Duty stayed perched on the throne while Battlefield kinda tripped. Because Battlefield lost more than grounds. It lost faith. And honestly, I don't think anybody was really expecting such a good comeback in Battlefield 6. Not even a comeback overall. And even if the reviews on Steam are not the best for the franchise overall, let's be honest, the game is pretty good. And through all this, Call of Duty continued. It leaned into live services, expansions, layering on content. It became a platform rather than a discrete game. I still don't understand that decision, but yeah. And that allowed it to absorb risk, but also to internalize stagnation. Because the players, they started muttering. The recycled maps, the cosmetic overloads, the overlaying crossover events. Even when Call of Duty was good, it rarely felt memorable anymore. The inertia kinda worked in its favor through the years, but the pushback was building. Eventually, good enough became the baseline. It's safer, it's profitable for Activision, but it is not inspiring. If Battlefield 6 succeeds in the long run, it's not because it beat Call of Duty at Call of Duty's game. It did something more subtle. It re-anchored itself with polish, humility, and intention. Battlefield 6 is built by Battlefield Studios. It's a joint effort by DICE, Ripple Effects, Criterion, and Motive. After the 2042 fiasco, EA seemed determined to get this back and not to let this flop again. Just the design language is a clear change, less gimmicky, less overreach, and a more grounded tone. The influences of Battlefield 3 and 4 are front and center. Budget whispers and rumors say this is a high 100 million project, over $400 million maybe, so it's clear that this is a bet from Electronic Arts and not a safe effort. Internally, it hasn't been smooth, let's be honest. There's reports of burnout, studio friction, over-ambitious targets, there's some cultural clashes among studios, and unfortunately that's not surprising for a project of this scale. But those reports also show that this is a fight, and often the riskiest projects produce the biggest stories and the biggest comebacks. When the Battlefield 6 open beta dropped in August, things got weird. On Steam alone, Battlefield 6 broke franchises records. A peak of more than 500,000 concurrent players. That number alone dethroned Call of Duty's all-time peak on Steam, which is close to those 500,000. And it's a moment many saw as symbolic. Battlefield had outgrown its past shadow. Analysts flagged the same metrics. Over 600,000 pre-orders already, around $35 million in revenue from that alone, wishlists crossed 2.7 million. And interestingly, around 62% of wishlisters claimed to have played Call of Duty in the past. The momentum was tangible, it was there. But numbers aren't destiny. A beta is a test. Many betas don't translate to sales or retention in the long run. I mean, just remember the 2042's beta peaks were promising, but that didn't really hold. And this is where Battlefield 6 polish and follow-through would be tested. Then, it finally came the launch day. EA confirmed it. Over 7 million copies sold in the first 3 days. The biggest launch ever in the franchise's history. During the same window, 172 million online matches, 15 million hours watched. Steam peaked at around 747,000 concurrent players, making this also its strongest Steam debut ever. That eclipses even the beta peak by a wide margin, by more than 200,000 players. Sales reports suggest PCD is stronger than expected. Over half of the units were sold on Steam in early windows. Revenue estimates for that launch week are north of $350 million across all platforms. EA also announced a robust content roadmap. Season 1 dropped October 28th, with new modes and maps lined up, along with the free Battle Royale modes aimed directly at Warzone. It's easy to see, as there are many borrowed mechanics. Honestly, I think there are too many borrowed mechanics, but that's another story. In other words, Battlefield 6 was a huge launch success for EA. And why has Battlefield 6 clicked? It's a return to identity and not an imitation. It doesn't feel like a Call of Duty clone. It feels like Battlefield felt in the past. And there's discipline polished. With 2042 so fresh in memory, anything less than a stable launch would have been unacceptable for the fans. And then there's scale with restraint. They brought back destructible environments, large maps, vehicles, but not at the cost of clarity or playability. And I think also really important is the player involvement in this. The Battlefield labs and beta feedback cycles helped shape how the game feels now. And then there's the creator mode, sandbox, the portal elements that give player agency to make content, reducing reliance on dev-only updates and only official game modes, if that makes sense. The risk, of course, is that expectations are now sky high. The moment one season dips or balance feels off, scrutiny from the community will definitely start to appear on social media and other channels. But Battlefield's comeback is only half the story. The real drama is in how Call of Duty is somehow showing signs of wear. Steam metrics are getting kinda ugly. Call of Duty recently hit a record low on Steam, about 54,000 concurrent players. But it's important to note that Steam only captures part of it, because Call of Duty is on Battle.net, is on consoles, is on Game Pass, but these signals matter. The trend is actually downward for Call of Duty. One article actually claims that Call of Duty saw an 86% drop in Steam player count month after month, heading into the Black Ops 7 reveal. Others observe that Call of Duty's life cycle is shrinking. Most players now bounce after a month instead of a lot of months or even a full year. And critics note that recent releases show lower retention and weaker peaks. Even Warzone, once a crown jewel for Activision, is less talked about. Its peak numbers on PC are now kind of modest. Community sentiment is increasingly critical. Because we've seen this before, there's too many cosmetics, and where's the new idea, where's the old map, where's everything we want. We can see it in a lot of places. But all in all, Call of Duty still has some enduring strength. There's a massive, and I mean massive, infrastructure. It's the global IP, the marketing muscle, the deep platform integration with all the games, and there's the monetization maturity. Lunar skins, bundles, passes, Call of Duty designs, the monetization templates many others follow nowadays. And there's the brand inertia, because even struggling titles get a second chance because people drift back in, and Call of Duty is one of the most sold games ever. And then there's the live ops expertise in the team, because this team, the different studios that make Call of Duty, they have decades of running events, migration, seasonal cycles, they know what they're doing, they understand how this works. But the other side is visible. There is formula fatigue. Many Call of Duty entries feel interchangeable. There's the monetization skepticism, because players have grown wary of aggressive monetization layered into the game systems. And then there's identity blur, because when every new Call of Duty is just more COD, the franchise kinda loses personality, and I think it has lost it a long time ago. And even on the development side, there are burnouts and constraints. Developers being assigned to a strict annual cycle kinda loses flexibility, and that pressure often stems bold ideas, even if Call of Duty is made by 3 different studios that release the game on a 3-year gap. And this is the more important part in my opinion, because Battlefield didn't just beat COD, it outgrew one dimension of it. When Call of Duty fought safer, Battlefield reclaimed. The difference is that Battlefield opted to double down on its metaphors of scale, of chaos, and surprise. It didn't chase Call of Duty's shifts in meta or gimmicky or more smaller stuff. It leaned into the things that Call of Duty abandoned. You could describe it as not fighting Call of Duty's war, but defining a battlefield of its own terms. And it's working. And let's be honest, players are really sensitive about this stuff. They can smell when something's chasing trends, and Battlefield 6 feels less like Pursuit and more like Homecoming. You don't feel the design forcing itself on you. And all of this, even when the campaign on Battlefield 6 is pretty bad, because it's pretty stale. But I'm not focusing on that today. Call of Duty is still incredibly capable, but so competent that the emotion is drained. Historically, Call of Duty's advantage was reliability. You knew what you'd get. But consistency ceases to feel magical when it's planned, when it's every time the same. And Battlefield's comeback leverages surprise, spectacle, and emotional weight. The things that Call of Duty diluted over the years. And trust matters here, because Battlefield needs to sustain, patch, and evolve. And if DICE continues to deliver, the comeback becomes self-reinforcing. But that's a big and important if. But I think Call of Duty can rest, because it is large enough to absorb other occasional releases. But Battlefield can't. It needs this win. That means bigger swings. It needs content variety, balancing risks, staying honest with the community, not only right now in the release window, but also in the upcoming years. If Battlefield fails to deliver in, let's say, Season 2 or 3, the narrative unravels. If it holds, this era might mark the start of a new balance among shooters. Over the last decades, many AAA shooters became live service shells, platforms to host monetization, skins, different modes, and the core experience is muted under layers of addition. Players are beginning to revalue character because they want a sense of place, tension, and surprise in the game they play. They want to feel it rather than optimize the experience. Battlefield's resurgence suggests that restoring identity may be the next frontier, the next step to follow. And this can put some kind of unexpected pressure on Activision and Call of Duty. If Battlefield sustains the next months, the next years, Call of Duty may be forced to pivot. Fewer gimmicks, more daring design, core risk again. I really think we are on a turning point where experimentation returns to mainstream first-person shooters. And if the giants are switching tools, space opens for others. Smaller teams can reclaim identity and some niche games can maybe breathe again and start to appear. So in conclusion, Battlefield didn't just beat Call of Duty in a head-to-head. It did something harder. It reminded us what shooters could feel like again. Not optimally calibrated systems, not stuff that repeats year after year, not brand-safe packages. It's moments of tension, squad cohesion, collapse, it's surprise. And yes, the new annual release Call of Duty is still to come, but the beta numbers weren't even close to great. But Call of Duty, as I said, is still massive, and it will be massive in the next year, in the next years. It's still one of the biggest gaming brands. It still holds sway, it holds leverage. But for the first time in a decade, that giant feels more vulnerable. Not because it was defeated, but because it's being recontextualized. Battlefield's moment is risky. One season flop, one patch disaster, one balanced backlash, and the narrative could swing back or reset. But if they hold, we may look back at this year as the start of a new equilibrium in FPSs. Because among all the fatigue, all the clones, and all the trend chasing in this industry, someone remembered the difference between being a game and feeling like a good game. Battlefield 6 is betting on that memory, and for once, it is not losing.